We begin with the postings of 65 ambassadors designate and high commissioners to various countries and the United Nations by President Bola Tinubu. The postings end weeks of anxiety over after the Senate in December screened and confirmed the nominees. Prominent on the list is the former aviation minister Femi Fani-Kayode, who's assigned to Germany, while former presidential aide Reno Omokri is posted to Mexico. Now, the special advisor to the president on information and strategy, Nanuga, who signed a statement announcing the postings on Friday, disclosed that 34 non-career and 31 career ambassadors have been assigned to their duty posts. Among the high-profile non-career appointees Lieutenant General Ibrahim, who is a former chief of army staff, who will serve as ambassador to Beijing in China, while Senator Jimoh Ibrahim has been designated as Nigeria's permanent representative to the United Nations. And we're just having a breaking news that's coming in right now, and also that the African Democratic Congress, ADC, has reacted to these postings. And according to its National Publicity Secretary, Bolaji Abdullahi, said that the government erred by publicly announcing ambassadorial postings before securing the required consent of host countries. And according to the ADC, the move contradicts established diplomatic protocol under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, saying, and I quote, publicly announcing the postings before securing the required posting from host countries exposes Nigeria to avoidable diplomatic embarrassment, saying that under Article 4 of the Vienna Convention, a sending state must first obtain the consent of the receiving state before appointing or announcing a head of mission. And that's coming from the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, one of Nigeria's main opposition political parties. Well, for more on the postings of ambassadors and high commissioners, we have joining us now a member of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, a lawyer and Arise News analyst, Frank Tietie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and so let's start from this latest information that's coming from one of the opposition political parties. We have the ADC saying there's another level of competence, that these ambassadorial postings should have waited until the consent of the accepting countries was secured first, then before the government will go ahead. But you and I know that there's been lots of anxiety. We're going into election year. People who have been screened, confirmed, I've just been going about, and some people, a politician told me that they've been loitering around because no postings, nothing, and they can't participate in the election. Wasn't that a wise decision by the government to actually rule this out?
It comes shocking if the ADC now has some form of information that is not open to the public, that these nominees, ambassadorial nominees, haven't yet been, screened and, issued the agreement before these postings were announced. The honest truth is that on my own side, the presumption is that between the time that they were screened and the time that they have now been posted, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, has been engaged in backdoor negotiations with these countries, and that with this public announcement of the postings, the expectation is that they have secured the acceptance. But if that is not the case, going by what the ADC has said, then our country will just be squaring up for some kind of embarrassment, which I think shouldn't really be.
Yeah, but I think they were reacting to the presidential statement. If you read the presidential statement, that statement said that for some, the government was still going to accept those, was still awaiting those.
No, I think that is a blunder on the part of the government, because these are, especially for the non-career diplomats that have been posted, that many of them who are known to be controversial persons, and persons who, even Nigerians that they are supposed to represent abroad, are doubtful of their commitment to even the president or to the country. So the truth about it is that they ought not in any way have issued that public statement that these postings have been done when they have not secured the agreement. It's wrong, because the embarrassment usually in diplomatic practice is that when an ambassadorial nominee is rejected, it triggers an unusual diplomatic tension. It either will require some reprisal on part of the Nigeria, which hasn't been, because I recall when Tunde Adeniro was rejected, as an ambassadorial nominee and to the United States, it was a huge embarrassment. Nigeria couldn't really retaliate, and somehow he was dropped. But we have gone past that kind of laxity in diplomatic circles, because everything has to be tidied up. And to give that kind of room for certain number of ambassadors to be announced to the Nigerian public without being accepted by the host country, it's actually an embarrassment already.
And I want to read this presidency's statement directly. I mean, it says that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has already received agreement from the United Kingdom for the High Commissioner designate Ambassador Aminu Dalhatu. Similarly with France for Ambassador Ayoke. The ministry has also conveyed the nominations of the other 62 designated envoys to all the countries concerned, including a request for their agreement in line with standard diplomatic practice. So I think it's from here that the ADC is picking its opposition
and I
to
think
this
the ADC,
particular
in that case, the ADC
issue.
is absolutely correct. For those of us members of the public, when the list was reeled out in the media, the expectation is that they've done their homework. But it's now turning out from what the ADC's reaction is, now emphasizing that aspect of the statement of the government, that they haven't really secured that. So what is the meaning of that? Meaning that...
Well, maybe they're under pressure. You have people who have been screened, confirmed for long, and
government cannot be under pressure now. If a government is going into 3 years of having recalled our ambassadors and hasn't done much until now, it shouldn't drive itself into unnecessary pressure or by conceding to one kind of pressure because of the huge criticisms it now receives from the the international community, and especially when we are approaching an election. I mean, so even though ambassadors don't have any tenure, they could go and serve for just 5 months, 3 months, 2 months, 6 months, or whatever, because they serve at the pleasure of the president. But again, if our foreign affairs minister had indeed at a time, alluded to the fact that the lack of ambassadors was because we didn't have enough money, it wouldn't make economic sense to now post ambassadors towards the end of a tenure, except this administration.
Maybe the government has more money now.
No, well, indeed, but it doesn't make economic sense, except with the government has some unusual confidence that it will win the next election, and that this same ambassadors will continue. Because we've lost quite a lot. I hope we will be able to do some redemption. That's why the pressure to make the announcement without any tangible, number of agreement being secured, it's a huge embarrassment already. Unfortunately, they are now giving grants to the ADC to be critical of this bold move that the government is seen to have made. It's not a very good development.
All right, let's go to the list. I mean, we have the likes of Senator Tietie being sent to South Africa. We have Reno Mokri being sent to Mexico. We have Femi Fani-Kayode being sent to Germany. Lieutenant General Dambaza being sent to China. And then, of course, some other political appointees. Aminu Dalhatu, of course, he had been in the UK since. Latif Kayode Aref, former intelligence officer, being sent. We already knew that one. But let's talk about Jimoh Ibrahim being sent to the UN permanent representative of Nigeria. I mean, that came as a shock to a lot of people.
Is it really a shock? I think it seems this list confirmed many of the not fears, but projections that many Nigerians had, that the president was under some form of bond to keep some fidelity to the promises he had made, or to keep the political bargains he had made.
Political IOUs.
Yes, that he had made with these appointees. All of those names you mentioned mainly are non-career diplomats. The expectation is that those career diplomats have been well trained. They spent an average of 25, 30 years in the foreign service, so we don't have any problem with them. But you can see we hardly mentioned their names when it comes to those countries that are influential, whether in Europe, Asia, or in the Americas. And that's a sad development. However, when you now see some of these persons that have been sent to these important countries, I know why I say because of trading relations and the need for Nigeria to continue to maintain its respect, because these ambassadors are actually the de facto president. They are de facto President Tinubu in these various countries. Now, when these people need to command respect, both the respect of Nigerians and the respect of their host countries, some of these names don't do that, don't have that kind of respect.
All right.
And in that case, the problem is that you find that the president simply may have just, used ambassadorial positions or postings to settle his political I would say, his political friends, and without, putting Nigeria's interest
Behind.
on the back seat.
All right, I'll just ask you to hold on while we go on this short break. And when we come back, we will still be discussing these issues of the ambassadorial postings to several countries across the world. Stay with us.
Most parts of the world, girl child are not recognized in a family. I hope all this problem holding down a girl child did not hold me down.
The idea behind the project is to identify schools that we think the parents are not economically empowered to sponsor their children to schools.
In demonstration of our commitment to reducing that number, we've come here today to provide some of the essentials that we believe would help the children in school. We worked with different schools in 5 states across the country, and we reached out to 15,000 children.
I want to be a food scientist, and Polaris Bank is helping me realize this dream. I'm perfectly excited.
Welcome back. You're still watching This Week, and I'm Sumner Sambu. Before we went on break, we're still talking about the ambassadorial postings by President Bola Tinubu. Finally, the list is out, and I still have right here with me Arise News analyst Frank Tietie. He's a lawyer and also a member of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Thank you so much, Barrister, for still being here with us. Now, talk to us about Jimoh Ibrahim. We're talking,
obviously,
before
Jimoh Ibrahim lacks the clout to represent Nigeria at that high level as a United Nations. The permanent representative of Nigeria at the United Nations definitely doesn't have it.
But he's not the first who is a non-career ambassador.
No, it's not about being non-career. It's about being able to understand the dynamics. I've been able to play the politics and earn the respect of other representatives at the United Nations, which I think he lacks. He's done quite well as a businessman and is serving senator. But that does not in any way translate. It doesn't translate to that kind of influence that comes from some kind of experience and relations that he has had and displayed in international relations. He lacks it. I don't like the idea that such an important position will be for someone who will be learning on the job, who will be doing some form of trial and error. However, that's why this criticism has come that the President Tinubu arm twisted to make some of these postings, because one would have thought that he would have considered some measure of competence. When the United States deploys, or the United Kingdom, the countries that I think have equal status with our country, it doesn't matter what our problems are, when they deploy their representatives to the United Nations, you could see when they are addressing the United Nations, they are persons that already have some kind of pedigree in the international circles. Jimoh Ibrahim doesn't have that, and I don't think he would impact much. I had the privilege of talking to Senator Tietie, for example, when he was first nominated. And I was congratulating him. And he replied and said, look, Frank, I have a prayer. Let the president send me to a place where there are problems that I need to solve that can be measured at the end of my service as an ambassador. I mean, that's a man
and
who...
he's been sent to South Africa.
It doesn't
now,
matter whether
so
or not he's a career diplomat. But you could see he has prepared himself. And he wants to measure himself with how much he is able to solve. The kind of good image he will represent as the de facto President Tinubu in South Africa, for example, and how much businesses is able, the quantum of businesses is able to negotiate in between South Africa and Nigeria, and then the goody feeling he's able to give to Nigerians who are in South Africa, who very much, many times have expressed that they're not well respected. So Senator Ibrahim can be easily measured because it comes out well prepared. Now, on the other hand, you can't say that about Jimoh Ibrahim and some other persons that are on that list.
All right,
that appear to be
before you
to be
continue
settled.
on that, I want to read out the names of former Nigerian permanent representatives to New York. That's UN in the past. From 1960 to 1963, we had Jaja Nwachukwu, who was the first Nigerian ambassador and permanent rep. He was also a politician. We had Muhammad Ngele Ruma, then followed by Simeon Adebo, Edwin Ogbu, Leslie Harriman, Dr. Yusuf Maitama Sule, Emeka Anyanku, then Tijani Muhammad Bande, Professor Joy Ogu, and then of course now we have Senator Jimoh Ibrahim being sent here. I mean, so from the list of all these people, you rate them side by side with Jimoh Ibrahim. Do you think he's a misfit, actually?
Oh, definitely. Jimoh Ibrahim does not in any way compare. Well, from Jaja Nwachukwu, who was well respected then, even though the days of the formative days of Nigeria, but you could see the clout that they carried at the UN as people representing Africa's, biggest and boldest country. But Jimoh Ibrahim does not cut out as someone who is actually the UN is not a place where you go and get profit.
Yeah, I mean, looking at some very great guys like Leslie Harriman. I mean,
you see,
in the 70s.
Jimoh Ibrahim has lived all his life as someone who is trying to gain from the system, take from the system, not giving to the system, not improving the system. So how can that person go to the United Nations? What's he trying to, even though I must concede to him that he's a lawyer, but he has been practicing more of commercial law and
so it's a presidential prerogative.
Of course, there's no doubt about that. But you
so
see, it is good that we put him to task. We put a lot of doubt in him so that he can prove us wrong. Because we expect that you can see the pressure that the representatives of Iran, Israel, and the United States are going through in the UN. You wonder whether Jimoh Ibrahim is cut out for that kind of...
especially when Trump is facing this
especially
axis.
Yes. So I've been to the United Nations sessions before, and I know how important it is that personalities are persons who are already known in the system. Jimoh Ibrahim doesn't have that kind of pedigree. All
right, interesting perspective. Now, let's look at others who have been sent. Reno Mokri, Femi Fani-Kayode, and others. I mean, these are the headliners that people have been expressing mixed feelings about.
Yes, that's the reason why it is thought that President Tinubu didn't quite do that as a result of his free will. It appears that these men negotiated these positions. And one very strange and uncanny thing about this is that all of these postings had the privilege of knowing their predictions before now, and they turned out. I was close to a former diplomat who gave me these predictions, and it turned out that they were correct in 100%. In terms of 100%, whether where Are was going to, where Oke was going to, where Fani-Kayode, where Ugwai and Ikpeazu, I got all of these things, and they were turned out. And that simply proved one thing: that these guys simply, one way or the other, worked and earned these postings. The question, therefore, is, are these men going to, carry on this assignment in the interest of Nigerians and to the benefit of Nigeria? That becomes a question that we must watch out for. Because many Nigerians have all raised doubt, especially as to Reno Mokri, who has suffered a lot in the social media because people thought he is a height of misfit and that he should not in any way, having criticized the president in such a malicious manner, having turned out to be very petty, fighting everybody, attacking Peter Obi and all of that, and suddenly, doing a turnaround and now becoming the representative of Nigeria as an ambassador becomes very questionable. However, he now has a responsibility to prove the Nigerians wrong. In fact, as I was preparing for this discussion, I got messages of how Nigerians are already protesting.
Yeah, I mean, there are some. I mean, I saw one of them
saying that an agreement should not be given to a person like.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Obi's spokesperson, Valentine Obieyem, who was saying that they were going to kick against
Interestingly,
that.
I don't think we've passed that stage of, of having Reno Omokri go through the character test. The president has posted him to Mexico. The question, therefore, is Reno Omokri now has a huge task before him to appear very diplomatic. He now appear a bit more refined and not taking courses to the social media to fight Peter Obi or to promote the president in such a manner that will turn to become a backlash.
All right. So as to wrap up this conversation, let's talk about how some other states on this list are already complaining that they are used to being sent to, areas that are not, like grade A postings. Like, Taraba State. Someone was telling me that, look, I mean, Taraba, what has Taraba State done to the previous Nigerian government? They're always sending them to some smaller states, like this one, Trinidad and Tobago, and all of that. Well, I mean, people may not look at that. I think areas.
Something is wrong.
And I've had that conversation too, I mean, previously. I mean, most of the people who have come for posting from FCT actually sent to like Gambia or Togo or somewhere like that. And it's just like Senator Grace Bent being sent to Togo. People kick against that.
It's unfair to talk like that. I mean, to reason in that manner. Look, we must see public service and postings like this as a national assignment. And when we have these opportunities to serve Nigeria, even in remotest parts of the world like North Korea, my own representative from Delta State at the time served in North Korea, and I was very proud because I was just imagining how he could, bring water out of stone. You see, it's wrong to think that...
someone being posted to Iran, for example, is it not like punishment? Someone was telling me,
not at all.
If you're posted to Iran, it's like punishment at this time.
Why would it ever be in the mindset of anybody that's an ambassador that he wants to get some juicy thing for himself? No, it's work. It's supposed to be work. You're supposed to protect Nigerians. So if you're sent to Ghana, if you're sent to Gambia, if you're sent to any of these interesting countries, Togo, you see, it is up to you to think of how to improve the situation for Nigerians that there. There are a lot of Nigerians in all these places, and bring out businesses and then represent Nigeria in such a manner that it retains its influence among African countries, so that when we even, because Nigeria should continue to lead the African continent. Unfortunately, we lost that because we haven't had ambassadors in these small African countries that have been able to continue the African unity that Nigeria leads. So we must take away that mindset that ambassadors are meant as an ambassador, you are meant to go and enjoy. Unfortunately, that's how it is now, because how do you send Femi Fani-Kayode to Germany? I mean, what experience has he got to go and negotiate with Europe's largest economy? For what purpose? How is he representing
Especially for business.
How is he going to represent Nigerians there? Do Nigerians respect him? A lot of Nigerians in Germany, do they see him as someone who is qualified with that paternalistic mindset that this represents our president? Let's run to him when we're in trouble. With that kind of fellow who appears to be very, who gets easily angry at Nigerians. So, and you send him to a place like Germany when he hasn't been an ambassador before. Well, you could have sent some other persons, for goodness sake. You could have sent Femi Fani-Kayode to Togo or to Benin. That is close to Nigeria here.
All right, because we don't have enough time, Tietie.
But the president prerogative.
It's his prerogative, actually, because some people said that, with the way Fani-Kayode has been slamming Israel, it could actually cause some chaos with the Germans, considering the relation between Israel and Germany, especially over the Holocaust.
He's one of those who is yet to get an agreement. I doubt whether he will get it that smooth and easy.
All right. One of the criticism by the ADC is that while Nigeria maintains about 109 diplomatic missions worldwide, the administration only announced 65 ambassadors, leaving 44 missions without envoys. So it's now asking, what happens to the remaining 44 missions? Are those posts to remain vacant indefinitely while Nigeria's diplomatic presence continues to shrink at the time of rising global uncertainty?
Sometimes I think the presidency needs to answer some of these questions, even though it's not too late for these postings to be, these nominations and these postings to be made. But if funding has ever been a problem, then we are thinking that some of these missions should be merged. In the real sense, we have missions in Nigeria that just from one country that is actually responsible for all of its affairs in the entire West African sub-region. So I think our diplomatic missions abroad, sometimes I think they're too bogus. We should have one or two measures, of these missions so that they can be more effective. After all, we are in a digital age. Some of these communications don't need to always be physical. It's especially in the continent where we already maintain serious presence at the ECOWAS and at the AU. We shouldn't have too many diplomatic missions in Africa. All
right, just before I let you go, Frank Tietie, this government has 449 days left before they exit power, and we're sending in diplomats.
I mean, it's not economically wise.
Some of the countries that are accepting this would have been thinking, I mean, why is this government sending these diplomats late? I mean, could that be the reason why those agreements are actually, dragging? That's why they're not coming. Because they just think that, look, why should you be sending diplomats before an election year? Are you sure you're going to come back? What if you don't come back?
The point is that let's first of all establish that under the rules, under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations and on our constitution and all that, there is no established tenure for the ambassadors. So they can serve for whatever short.
But there are procedures and processes that must be followed, including security vetting.
Then there are countries like the United States that I know that would delay the issuance of agreement, and some other countries that would delay, and it will take about 100 days or more. Right. And then we wonder whether it makes real economic sense. But there's something that strikes me. It shows that this government, this administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, appears to be quite confident that it is returning in 2027. Well. But what we had thought was that these men were supposed to go to work, because many of them will actually not get agreement. And let them go to work to re-elect President Tinubu so that they can be sent back. But I doubt, if ever, they will get this deal if President Tinubu gets re-elected. All right.
We must thank you so much, Frank Tietie, for joining us to help us take a look at this list. I mean, there are still so many others there that are controversial. But
there's a certified spy chief that's been sent to United States. I guess he'll be very worried, because a man who has been in our, Director of Military Intelligence, who has headed our SSS, he's certified spy. They will not trust him.
Well, the US actually does that too.
Yes, but it depends. But sometimes,
including Israel,
in these days where we had a president in the United States that is quite unpredictable, I guess that there will be more circumspect with that kind of. But it's one of the most qualified persons. I'm talking about the colonel. Right. But unfortunately, he's going to be faced with a serious scrutiny. I doubt if the Americans will give him, clearance within the next 3 months.
All right. Very interesting perspective. I think I read from somewhere that, it was the presidency statement that, the agreement for UK and for France have already been.
The US can be quite brutal for punishing Tunde Adeniran despite his impeccable qualifications, for the misdeeds of his son. They punished him and they rejected him.
We must thank you so much, Frank Tietie, is a Rise News analyst, lawyer, and member Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. We must thank you for helping us to understand all of this. And